Hey all, here OS Reviews. Today we're taking a revisited look at the Nubia X. This is a very unique Android smartphone that came out in 2018, but what sets it apart is aside from the main display on the front, there's also a rear screen on the back, which is OLED 5.1 inches. This design serves several purposes. For one, you can use the higher quality cameras on the rear to take better quality selfies, and actually there is no front-facing camera, so you have a more impressive nearly 94% screen-to-body ratio. There is no need for any hole punch, there is no notch, there is no pop-up selfie camera system. Second of all, this display can be used to show different wallpapers in an always-on display mode. Here's one such example in a Galactica theme, and because an OLED screen doesn't really consume too much power if the background is black, and also the mirror treatment actually blends seamlessly with the phone's exterior and gives it a pretty convincing effect that there is just a logo of some sort printed on there, and this is completely customizable. We also have this floating kind of goldfish that you can also use instead. Also looks quite beautiful and artistic. Alternatively, here is an analog clock that you can activate, changing the way that the phone looks. Kind of similar to what a phone case can do in terms of adding more of a customized, personalized touch to the aesthetics. Here's a couple of final examples just to share as illustration. It makes use of popular culture icons as well, which is quite cute. In fact, here's a closer look at the entire app gallery, the various icons and styles that you're able to customize it with. Again, very similar to on a smartwatch. With that being said, it's not the first time that we've seen a dual display smartphone concept, although it is very innovative. We actually first saw this on the YotaPhone, released roughly 3 years prior to the Nubia X. This one, though, doesn't have a OLED screen, but rather a e-ink display on the rear, which can be used to read back documents like PDFs as well as books more comfortably, similar to a Kindle e-reader. However, similarities include the fact you can customize the way the back of your phone looks since there is technically a screen there. It consumes even less power. You can access basic notifications, including tickets if you're trying to get on a plane, as well as having a more conventional color OLED display there on the front. So again, the concept of the Nubia X having two displays isn't necessarily brand new, but it takes in a slightly different direction. I'll also briefly mention that this brand, Nubia, is not one that seems maybe super familiar for many folks here in the States, in the US and Europe. However, it is a company that's technically a subsidiary of ZTE, likely a more familiar name for many folks out there, but Nubia is more of their upscale, kind of a boutique sub-brand where they focus a lot more on design, and lately some more gaming-centric phones as well. We actually first saw the Nubia Z17 series a couple years prior, and I really love the attention to detail from Nubia, including their emphasis on placing these red accents, having a very distinctive launcher that looks utterly unfamiliar compared to what we have in stock Android, and also having some very nice design elements that just make it look more luxurious. So we can see a lot of that DNA shared on the Nubia X here, which is a slightly newer device. A closer look at the design here, the front panel measures 6.3 inches diagonally. It is a full HD resolution, again IPS LCD screen, but again very minimal bezels here that are quite beautiful looking for content consumption purposes. Frame of the phone is constructed out of aluminum alloy. It is relatively slim, and we have a design by Nubia stamped onto the edge along with two fingerprint scanners, one on the left and one on the right. And although that might seem a little bit redundant at first, Nubia claims that this makes it easier to unlock the phone regardless of how you're holding it, either with the left hand or the right hand, and more importantly, you can hold on both fingerprint scanners to essentially flip the screen over to the other side. Top features a IR blaster, so you can use this phone as a universal remote to control different appliances, and then on the left hand spine, just a simple volume rocker. Bottom here just features the USB Type-C port for charging up to 18 watts, and to top up the 3,800 milliamp hour capacity cell takes really just about an hour and a half, and then you have just a loudspeaker there. So it's not the most compact smartphone that we've ever seen, but nor is it the largest size phone either. We have, again, seen devices with 6.7-inch, 7-inch displays as well, which are even more unwieldy. This is still mostly comfortable enough as you are using it, I would say. That being said, because of the dual screen nature, I would say the 3,800 milliamp hour pack is not the largest in the world, and this is mostly a one-day phone before you have to really top it up again. There is no Qi wireless charging, by the way, and underneath the hood, this is rocking the Qualcomm Snapdragon 845 processor, Octa-Core, 4G LTE enabled, and also coupled up to 8 gigabytes of RAM and up to 256 gigs of built-in storage. These are flagship specs of yesteryear, and even now, the RAM as well as storage are still fairly impressive, I would say. The processor is not going to be the newest and latest greatest anymore, but can still be a decent performer for casual everyday use. I'll just mention that the back here just houses, again, the cameras, which includes a 24 megapixel primary, as well as a 16 megapixel depth sensor for capturing bokeh effects. I would have liked to see this instead be a ultra wide angle lens or even a telephoto zoom lens, which I think are more practical choices. Now, Nubia UI on top of Android is a very customized skin, but it's actually one of my favorites. All of the applications that you see here are designed from Nubia, so they have a very cohesive overall UI design language going on. So for example, here's also a built-in voice recorder from them as well. They make great use of red accents through the entire UI, and all the icons do look pretty elegant in my opinion. This actually feels quite tasteful and special. Now you can also swipe up on the left-hand side of the bottom corner to bring up basically your control panel. Adjusting different connectivity options can all be accessed down below here as well. And this phone does come with the essentials including NFC for contactless mobile payment, as well as GPS and Bluetooth. And customization goes quite deep. So if you go into settings, you're also able to turn on things like a eye care mode for this rear display, making it even more blue or colder depending on your preferences. A dedicated gaming mode will also disable any background apps, as well as improve on the GPU performance as you are gaming. And one other kind of interesting application that takes advantage of the rear display is using it like a trackpad. So as you're holding the phone on the rear, because the back is also touch sensitive, you can use it as left and right shoulder key as you're tapping with your fingers there on the rear if you are playing some more advanced arcade games. So another interesting application of having touch sensitivity there, kind of similar to the PS Vita. And then just like on the Z17, there are some additional edge gestures for doing things like switching back and forth between applications. You can flip through them just by using the side of the phone. You can also swipe up and down repeatedly to enter a clear all mode to increase the RAM, as well as swipe using both edges of the screen to increase things like the screen brightness level. And if you prefer, you can opt for virtual navigation buttons instead of the gesture nav, which uses, again, red accents super similar to their previous phones. Plus, if you long hold on the home key for a couple more seconds, you can also trigger a shortcut to do something like open up the voice assistant, open up multitasking as a quick shortcut, so on and so forth. So it's very customizable, a lot of small attention to detail, which I really love to see. Next, let's take a quick look at how the camera works by jumping into the UI, and this is where things are not necessarily perfect. I say that because clearly ZTE and Nubia as well put more emphasis on design rather than having the most R&D compared to companies like Google, for instance, or Apple, and optimizing their computational photography. I just say that because the images are fine, but they're far from being the best when it comes to, for instance, not really having a low light night mode available. Plus, on this particular phone, I have found the field of view to be surprisingly more limited as compared to other devices. So for example, if we're pointing it at an object, we sometimes have to step just a little bit further away to capture the entire frame. There is an HDR mode at the very least that you can turn on manually to add a little bit more contrast in your photos, as well as under advanced settings, you can turn on functions like face detection, bring up a couple of additional filters that you can apply on your shots, and you can also go into a pro mode for adjusting properties like ISO, white balance more manually, and then down below here you can also begin to record video or jump into the portrait mode. So not really quite as advanced as many competition in this regard, but it works. Here are some samples just to serve as illustration. Here's a few more shots of plants as well, and if you do zoom all the way in, it looks decent, but again, it's not going to be mind-blowing, nor is it really a camera-centric phone per se. Good enough to capture your memories and to share on social media, but definitely not going to be a Pixel or an iPhone beater in this regard. That being said, being able to use these sensors when you're taking selfies by turning the phone around and using the back as a viewfinder is at least slightly higher quality than on many comparable phones from the time, since you do have higher resolution and that portrait mode available compared to oftentimes much less high quality front-facing sensors. And now moving to a quick demo of the speaker quality as well as video playback, jumping into YouTube. So some takeaways would be that it is a pretty good sounding speaker at the bottom, which is relatively full, doesn't distort at higher volume levels. The only issue is it's not really a stereo set. That being said, it's still a very enjoyable experience when it comes to consuming media on this, again, nearly uninterrupted 6.3-inch display. Definitely is one of the higher quality IPS LCD panels that I've seen. Reception quality also seems to be quite good, with dual band 2.4G and 5G Wi-Fi almost consistently getting full bars, so I was not really having any issues when it comes to loading back videos rather quickly. So this 10nm Octa-Core chip I would say is holding up still really well here in 2023, and this is not a chip that thermally throttles either, so performance is still relatively cool as you're using the phone. Similarly, when it comes to doing a bit of gaming, you won't find too many issues here, including even more demanding titles like PUBG, Asphalt, Minecraft, so on and so forth, not to mention more casual titles as well. I will say though that after, say, 30 to 40 minutes of continuous gaming, the phone will get a little bit warmer, but like I said before, the 845 isn't really a chip that is known for thermal throttling, so pretty comfortable overall. And as aforementioned previously, on supported phones that require kind of a trigger control, you can activate the touch handle mode. I'll also mention that in some cases, if you're doing a bit of reading, that rear display can be slightly more comfortable because of the blue light filter mode that you can activate, kind of like a slightly weathered book in some cases, and you're able to, again, still read pretty comfortably on this screen as well, even though the technical resolution of this 5-inch panel is 720p. But since the size isn't as large as a main display, the PPI count is still good enough that it looks plenty sharp, still is a pretty good overall experience. So that is more or less it as far as a revisited look at the Nubia X. Definitely a very distinctive and unique smartphone. And as aforementioned, I always like checking out innovative products because it pushes the boundaries of what's conventional and tries to experiment in ways that are different. Especially back in the early 2000s and 2010s, pretty much every single smartphone that was released had something different, a new twist or trick that just made it really special. Although it's great that this category has mostly matured, it's also not quite as fun as it once was. So whenever we see something different or a manufacturer try to push the boundaries again, I am just excited, even if the execution isn't going to be perfect, nor is it necessarily practical, but it still brings back some excitement, which is kind of hard to come across. And again, I applaud Nubia and ZTE for just trying something new. And for me at least, it's still a pretty refreshing software experience. It's definitely far from stock feeling, but if you want something completely different, a lot of unique ideas, including some of those edge sense gestures, you can check out more details if interested in the links down below. But for now, that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That's been the Nubia X Revisited.